Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the virtual educational series with MySecurity Media. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the executive editor for MySecurity Media, and I'm joined by my co-host, Raman Sopory, who is with the Aerospace and Defence Consultants Association of India. Raman, thank you very much for joining us. And this is our episode 1 of a 6-part series that we're holding. So this is a special weekly series that Raman and I have been working on, really just to discuss the aerospace, defence and security sector, particularly between India, Australia and the ASEAN region. This particular episode is just to open up the series, introduce you as the audience to what we will be discussing, and then we'll have some guests and a series of guests over the coming weeks also. Episode 1, which should come up now, the introduction to the series. We're going to be joined by Dr. Vasudeva very shortly, and also we have our Asia Pacific Security Magazine correspondent in Mumbai, Sarosh Bana. Thank you very much for joining us, Sarosh.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure being here.
Very much. Sarosh and I have been working together for about 10 years since we started the Asia Pacific Security Magazine. So it's a pleasure to be on a new platform now, and we're going to cover off some of Sarosh's articles with us also. Raman, if you can just keep an eye on Dr. Vasudeva when he joins us.
Sure.
But for the audience, now obviously the audience is a mix of, at the moment, Australia and India. We have the audience from across India as well. Really, it's everything's on the table. When we talked about what we would like to cover, Raman, with his enthusiasm, gave me a list of, I think, almost 20 things. I had to cut it down to about 15, but it's pretty much the same list. I think, Raman, I might hand over to you actually, and to sort of introduce this list. Maybe certainly introduce yourself and your background, and how this list formed, and your thinking around what we will be covering over the next sort of 6 weeks.
Good morning, good afternoon, Australia. Namaste, India. My name is Raman Sopory. I'm a veteran from the Indian Air Force. I was in active duty for 25 years, and I was on the person in uniform with a thinking cap on my head. So from telecom to software to avionics to lasers, I am the true definition of a cocktail engineer. And I had been commanding a lot of units, both in the plain as well as the mountain areas. There's a lot of action going on right now. Last 15 years, I have been working on consulting mode in various organizations, both small, medium, both Indian and foreign companies. Ladies and gentlemen, this slide or the webinar series is actually a thought between me and Chris as to post-COVID, where is the money? What you see on the slide is some key areas. We have identified 50 such areas where each line item can generate $1 billion of business between India, Australia, and rest of the world. Details we cannot share today, but any company who's wanting to join us in the subsequent webinars or additional webinars can connect us through the email. Details are already with you. And we consult companies from all over the world. And since India and Australia have signed a defense pact recently, you must have heard the hot news. There's a lot of cooperation happening between Australia and India. We are trying to see that today we are present from Sydney to San Francisco. So any company in India, Australia, or rest of the world brings a technology solution on the table within the 4 walls of the procurement policies of India. India is now having the money. India wants to procure things and technologies, and we want to have a global supply chain. What we are going to do from next year onward is the top 500 Indian companies list being issued by the 3 people whom you see on the screen here. And with this small introduction, I can say that forget about COVID. COVID is already gone. It will go. And the vaccine for COVID is on the sky. Yesterday, one company called Glenmark has already issued the medicine. It's very cheap. We have to be safe, secure, at the same time move with the positivity in mind. I'm very person who sees the glass always half full. So keep yourself safe, healthy, and cheerful. Over to Chris.
Thank you, Raman. It's always good to have someone positive, because I'm more of the pessimistic. I'm an optimistic pessimist, as I say. So until I see that vaccine, I think we also have to prepare for the worst as well. So we'll see who's right and see how we go. Obviously, I'd prefer Raman to be correct and a vaccine comes shortly. But until it does, and until it's rolled out in a way that everyone can use it, I think we're going to be in a roller coaster ride for a while. But obviously, this is driving now a new emphasis and acceleration on the geopolitical landscape as well. And we have been running this. So for the audience, we run a podcast show, a Cybersecurity Weekly podcast, and have been looking at the national security implications of COVID-19, more on the Australian landscape, but also that geopolitical, and we now call it the Indo-Pacific, from the Australian perspective and the Indian perspective as well. So again, we are seeing COVID-19 has been in that accelerator. We're seeing drone applications for surveillance. We're seeing population surveillance applications deployed. We're seeing robotics being deployed, and it's also changing a shift in the security technology sector, where we're moving to contactless and hybrid security technologies to avoid contamination. So it really has been a massive change, an accelerated change, and that will continue. And I like Raman's sort of scope in terms of where is the money, because we are here in terms of a market, and we're market driven. Government is trying to keep our economies going, and obviously defence, aerospace and security are key sectors, and and cybersecurity being one of those. I suppose from an introduction to the audience and new to us at MySecurity Media, we have about 10 different channels. We cover Asia Pacific, ASEAN region and the Australian market. We have a drones and robotics channel called drasticnews.com, and a bunch of other channels, CCTV surveillance, and also Chief IT, big data, cloud computing, and the channel sector. So we've been around for about 10 years. And again, I was in India with the New South Wales government last September as part of a cybersecurity cohort. So the Indian, New South Wales government, Indian, Australian national government, and all state governments are driving economic links to India. And we are seeing a shift, a transition away from obviously the Chinese market to the Indian market. And we see U2 to the north, and one has always been a Western country in terms of our view of where India is, and the geopolitical change is bringing us all together. So it's we won't go into the politics, or we'll try to avoid the politics during this series. It's only going to get us into trouble. But again, those issues create new opportunities, and that's our thinking here. Let's move on to, make sure you've got the right, yep. So we just mentioned our new joint partnership, the Australian-Indian Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, and underlying that was between the President Modi and Prime Minister Morrison, the Australia-India Mutual Logistics Support Arrangement, and the Defence Science and Technology Implementing Arrangement. Effectively, this puts Australia and India on mark, and Australia recognises India as a significant security partner for Australia, and establishing a greater cross-service military activity. The link is there. We'll put the link in the show notes as well in terms of the full joint statement, but that was signed, I think, just a fortnight ago. And I also just wanted to raise some cyber security activity. We talked about the geopolitical activity that we're seeing, and cybersecurity is a major driver here in Australia. So New South Wales government has just announced a $240 million fund as part of a $1.6 billion announcement for a digital transformation, and cybersecurity makes up $240 million of that. That is the largest cybersecurity fund or funding announced in Australia, and it beats the national cybersecurity funding previously from 2016. In the next couple of months, we anticipate an Australian cybersecurity strategy. What we are seeing, and what was announced on Friday by the Prime Minister, was a copy and paste compromise approached by a foreign state actor. Everyone is pointing obviously to China. There was also reports out of India of significant cyber attacks. As the title here in this advisory, it's available on the MySecurity Marketplace and on cybergov.au, is effectively these tactics and techniques are literally that cut and paste and can be applied to any network. So all of us in this particular space need to be aware of this, but it's also an opportunity. I mentioned our visit to India last September as part of a cybersecurity cohort and linkage of trade between India and New South Wales in particular. Something that just also started this week is a task force for Australian national cybersecurity with the New South Wales government and AusCyber. So anyone in India in particular in cybersecurity or in that space that you want to find out more, definitely obviously touch on our marketplace, but you can reach out to Raman or myself if you're interested in any partnerships or linkages. We'd be happy to put you in contact. And one of our guests will be the New South Wales Trade Commissioner during this series, and we'll touch on that briefly shortly. So we are going to be covering cybersecurity as heavy as we possibly can. Sorry, went one over. Raman, would you mind introducing, and I don't think he has joined us just yet. Let me just check. No, he's not on the line, but would you mind introducing Dr. Vasudeva, who was going to join us, and but at least in his absence, open the series.
Yeah. May I have the speaker?
You are speaking.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce Dr. S.K. Vasudeva. He is a distinguished scientist from Defense Research Development Organization. After finishing his stint with the Government of India, he is currently Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India in the military technologies. He is also the Distinguished Fellow of the Aerospace Defense Consultants Association of India, and we are honored to have him as a Distinguished Fellow. He is also the Visiting Fellow at the Center for Land for SSE. He comes with a lot of technologies, strategic technologies, and a lot of papers to him. And currently, his area of interest is strategic technologies. Details we can't share on paper, but he is a person whose every word, full stop, comma, is seen by the media. And he is working with a very senior person in the Government of India, Dr. Vijay Raghavan, who is advisor to the Prime Minister of India. So what we have here is access to the think tank of the Indian top echelons. Incidentally, Dr. Vasudeva is a person who is a go-getter himself, and he is always smiling and cheerful. Welcome, Dr. Vasudeva. I think you have a conference call with one senior person in the Government of India. As you know, the Indian Army is on full alert today. So we respect your time, but surely if he's not able to join today, he just spoke to me that he's got a call suddenly. So it doesn't matter. Over to Chris. Thank you.
I can actually see him on the line, and what I'm going to do, just to give him a warning, I'm going to see if we can join Dr. Vasudeva. He has joined us
in his video and audio.
So I'm just going to put him on notice that I'm going to click to unmute you, and we'll see if he can sign in. Dr. Vasudeva, can you hear us?
I can hear, yes. Are you able to hear me?
We can. I just want to check with Raman.
Yeah, a few minutes I can spend with you. So thank you, Raman Sopory. Thank you very much for introducing me. I have been interacting with Sopory for a long time, and as the topic is the cyber security and the other fields which are like the drones and all that. So you see, I have a special interest in all these fields, and recently, about 3 years back, I helped the guys for setting up a startup in Noida for making the drones. This is the drones. Mainly, the aim of the drone is for the networks. You see, for the creating the networks for the Army, Air Force, and Navy. So this is the aim of making such a type of drones, that ad hoc networks we can generate.
Okay.
As you are aware that we are the second largest users for the internet, and we are infected with a lot of problems as far as the security of the net is concerned. A lot of attacks are there, phishing attacks, another type of attacks. Though we are taking a lot of care, we have various mechanisms by the different ministries. We have got the machinery, but still, you see the problem which we are facing is mainly with respect to the hardware. The hardware, we are not making the much hardware in India, and it's coming mostly from the China, and the bug is put into that, and then through RFID they can chase your system, they can get the information, they can stop your system. So these problems we are facing, and for that purpose now we are the India is shifting a focus for making its own hardware, especially for the telecom. The Indian Prime Minister has given the instructions to the telecom that the hardware which is coming from outside should not be used, and we should have our own routers and all that. Till date, we have been using the hardware which was coming from outside. As far as the software is concerned, you are aware that the India is very strong in software. So software problems are not much there. So both the problems are to be addressed, the software and the hardware. So the India is taking the action in hardware. And another thing is you see the education in security, cyber security. This is a field which is lacking, and perhaps I think we can have the guidance from you people for making the trained personnel. We have got a less trained person in the field of the cyber security. So I think Australia can help in this by organizing various courses for the youngsters and the startup. Not much startups are there. We have very less number of startups at the moment. But if the two countries join, then probably I think it will be very helpful for India to get the security experience from the Australia in the field of hardware and software. And our strength in software is very good, and that can be used. As far as the defense is concerned, you are aware that we have the government made that's a Defense Cyber Security Agency. So it was made, and we are taking care of all our sets in the field of the defense by way of the network protection and the spams and all those which are there. So these are being looked after by the agency which was created in 2 years back. And the civilian sector, we have the institutions like Indian Institute of IIT Bombay Technology. So we have got the good startup from there. It's very strong in the security solutions. And in addition to that, we have a few startups in Bangalore who are doing very good research, and they are also providing the support to the other countries. So I think with the help of your organization, we can create space for the working together and tackling the problem. And you see, the weak field which I see is the treaties between the two countries. So we have not signed much, and the cyber crime treaties are not there much in place. And the most of the problem which originated from the outside was creating problem for our the banks and all that. And still a lot of problems are still there. So we have to look after that also, and we can work together in this field to protect our financial institutions, banks, so that such attacks are avoided and people are not harassed. So it's good to be with you people today. So thank you very much. So we can work together, we can find the avenues in the fields which were listed by in your this thing, and it will be very interesting to work with you people. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Vasudeva.
you, Dr. Vasudeva.
Thank you very much.
What we are going to do is that between me and Chris, we'll be filing a report on weekly basis, send you a copy of the salient points discussed and the questions also. Chris, Dr. Vasudeva has asked for 5 technology areas which India needs. So I'll be preparing a report and then working out with you. And I'm sure Dr. Vasudeva will give us some time, if not physically, virtually, because visiting these days is tough next to possible. So thank you, Dr. Vasudeva, and convey our regards to everybody you're working with. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm gonna mute you now, just so I don't want to be rude, but just in case. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice meeting you all people. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vasudeva. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's amazing that you just touched on pretty much that's why we had that long list, Raman, in terms of the amount of opportunities here. He mentioned the startup hub in Bangalore, and I was lucky enough to visit there last September. So it's an impressive sort of startup ecosystem that's coming out of India, and the way that you've structured what startups are and defined startups is also of interest. And you started on telcos, drones, software, hardware. We definitely identify cybersecurity education as a key factor as well. So there are definitely those opportunities. What we might do now, because Sarosh has been waiting patiently there also, and Sarosh, as I mentioned,
I'm still here.
Good. I mentioned Sarosh has been writing with us for 10 years. It would be too many articles to bring up all at once if I listed them all, but these are just some of them earlier this year. So Sarosh, I think I might just hand over to you and sort of introduce yourself also, and some of the key topics that you take interest in your writing, and then we'll just open up for a general conversation.
Well, thanks very much, Chris, and it's a pleasure to be here. I should also thank Raman Sopory for having drafted such a good schedule for our talks. And basically, it has been a pleasure, every one of those 10 years you have mentioned, to be associated with your really prestigious publication. And now, of course, it's online, but it has been a really stimulating period that I have shared with you.
Correct. We used to print, didn't we?
Yes, earlier.
Everything's new.
So, I'm based in Mumbai in India, and which is the financial capital of India. And that's one reason why we have this Business India magazine, which is the oldest and the largest fortnightly business magazine in India. I'm the executive editor of the magazine. We are also working online now. Work from home is the new mantra now. And I'm also the regional editor of Asia Pacific region of Naval Forces, which is a very reputed magazine on naval technologies and naval systems, which is published out of Germany. I certainly, that's what Chris has put on the screen. And basically, I enjoyed talking and writing about issues such as defense and security, strategy, policy, foreign affairs, environment as well, and a few other issues. But defense and security and strategy are really my deep interests.
Maybe just introduce us to these particular types of articles. How do you go about writing an article on frigates? You obviously, is this based, initiated from a government announcement, or is it something that you hear and keep in contact with the government media? And how is this initiated, these types of articles?
Well, Chris, basically being in the Indian context, the Indian context is very unique. For instance, when we talk about the COVID syndrome and pandemic which has swept across India and so on, the problems which people would be facing in India on account of a virus of that sort would be completely different, or at least very distinctive from the rest of the world, simply because the absolute crush of humanity which is there in our country. we have almost the same population as China, which is 1.34 billion people, all meshed in a place which is 1/3 the area of China. So it's a major challenge that we face on a daily basis. And a city like Bombay, for instance, where we have the COVID cases spiraling every day, we are having people who live in slums. One slum, which is in Bombay proper, is supposed to be the largest slum in Asia, and it has something like 15 million people, 15 million, 1.5 million people living in just 2.7 square kilometers. So you can see the congestion which is there. So basically, for instance, I think about these things, of course, because they are all around me. And one article, for instance, which I wrote, which was probably the first article on the subject written from India, was on the humanitarian catastrophe as far as the COVID virus is concerned, because this gave rise to a huge exodus of people who are the so-called migrant workers who come to Bombay in other cities in large numbers from the rural countryside, the villages where they work, and they were left high and dry when this extremely harsh and punitive lockdown was declared with just a timeline of 4 hours. And that was the only warning that people had, 4 hours. And then we had a 21-day lockdown, and then it went on, it was extended, and it's just being relaxed now. So it has been so that was one aspect of it, that how I write. Of course, then there are also various policies of the government which come out from time to time on cybersecurity, on defense and security, on foreign relations. For instance, even the what you have been mentioning about India and Australia getting now more closer cooperation and collaboration in the field of defense, in the field of even cyber defense, and in the field of fighting terror on a joint basis. So these are issues which are extremely important for our country and which are absolutely necessary to be putting out to the people by way of information.
I think one of the things that we want to get out of this as well, rather than obviously where the money is and where the major trade opportunities are, is the cultural education here all the time between India, Australia, and the ASEAN region. The 10 countries of ASEAN are all very different. It's something I've always had interest in the Asia Pacific, in terms of the difference between each country. Now, but thank you very much for that. And I think one thing I was thinking of when you were talking about that, in terms of the population and the technology trends that I saw in India, and we continue to see, is the use of the smartphone, the smart device. And that's something we're going to cover off in the next episode as well. And something that was previously mentioned is also the importance of the supply chain. We're also talking the human supply chain as well, foreign workers and the way that they move around. I've got a raised question here. Oh no, it's a friend, Mr. Matthews, saying hello to you, Sarosh. And what I was going to say to the audience, hello, is if you have a question, is anyone in the audience that has a question or wants to have a particular area covered, you can raise your hand here and ask a question and just type it in, and we will address that as best we can. Otherwise, as I mentioned, there are 6 episodes to this particular series. This one, we're just going to keep you wanting more, I think, at this stage, and introduce episode 2. But Raman, before we kind of wrap up, the idea here was just to introduce the audience to what we're trying to achieve over the next 6 editions or episodes. And I'm going to rattle off some guests here shortly. What are some of the areas that you would like to comment on before we close here? And maybe some commentary. You mentioned the Indian Army is on alert. What are some of your expectations over the sort of next few weeks as to the situation there?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sarosh. What we plan to do is that take a balance between the technology and business. In the current scenario of post-COVID, when people are working from home, the people who are in the hardcore sales team are not comfortable because they would like to sit across a coffee table or a cocktail circuit. That's not happening now. So this particular webinar series is going to give that balanced view of what are the opportunities between India, Australia, between India, Europe, India, USA. The government of India already has the plans for procurement, but our worry was to how do we help the medium and small scale industry to enter the Indian as well as the global supply chain. The Australian side has also approached through Chris, and I am in touch with the many senior people in the government of Australia also, which Chris knows. Our prime focus is number one, cyber security for both the countries and for the world to make it a peaceful place. There are more cyber attacks during the COVID period also, and yesterday there was a cyber attack on the State Bank of India also, and many such institutions also. So our association has got experts. We would like to submit a list to Chris and take it from there. Incidentally, just to share with the audience who do not know us, we are India's largest think tank on aerospace, defense and various technologies. And we have got presence in 20 cities in India, and we got partners almost all across the world. A blog which I wrote on the LinkedIn just about 2 days back, within 48 hours, it was viral all over the world. I was trying to sanitize the hardware which goes into Indian networks without naming some OEMs and tier ones. Currently, some of this hardware was manufactured or designed in China and coming to us. So we are coming out with, please share the details so that we know what hardware is coming from where. It's got a tremendous response from USA also. It's like the confession box today. So we are opening a confession box. Okay, you've done business, but please share where is the hardware coming from. Share with us. Today, out of 50,000 plus drones in the Indian subcontinent, 90% are coming from China. It's not a question of business or money. It's a question of security. What in case of an ops, the hardware becomes suddenly alive? For example,
so Raman,
a router. Yeah.
Raman, if I can ask that question, the expectation there, would you say now from, let's say, at least military end of the scale, is that the supply chain is to exclude China completely, or is it just has to be declared of what is where and things are made?
In the military already, there are some programs where without naming, it is appreciated, understood by all the stakeholders that the China hardware will be kept out. Because we do not know who's going to certify that software, who's going to do the testing. I am not having that kind of budget to do the testing and then supply. So we have to cut down the time also. So that's what I'm saying. Get into the confession box. If you are not able to certify yourself, who's going to certify? So somebody has to certify that box. Neither the hardware nor the software. For me to, let's say that you supply me a piece of hardware which has got embedded software. I say it is defect free. For me to test and certify that there is a zero defect, I have to test it infinite number of times. That is physically not possible. So that makes an assumption, a hypothesis that whichever software goes into military system, there's at least one bug in the software. So long as it is a land system or a shore-based system, not a problem. What in case the software is in the air, in an aircraft or in an airborne network or air defense system, on a fighter aircraft, on a data link which is in the air? In case there is a bug, I can't switch off the aircraft and switch on again. That's not possible at all when a military. It's a question of life and death for me. So testing is very expensive, and we can't have any unknown third-party people testing it. So it is better that government permits self-certification, and government is setting up. There's a business opportunity for software testing facility, drone testing facilities. So that itself, third-party testing, third-party certification itself is a business opportunity. So I am not saying that. Yeah, sure. Over to you, Chris.
I was going to say, I imagine now in that secure supply chain, and my question is the opportunities there for both cybersecurity, but also, high-level manufacturing and highly technical manufacturing here in Australia, but also in India. The frameworks there that are there to make sure that they can start to, because I always think the Australian market is too small hence why I've always looked at Asia, and the process for them to go through that, for the opportunity for an Australian technical manufacturer, an Australian cybersecurity company, how they would potentially reach the Indian market. And obviously that is through the India-Australia government agreements, and that they have to enter through locally here in Australia first. What are your, maybe just briefly describe
Chris, may I just button on this to take off from where Raman was mentioning? There has been a real awareness about the hardware and of the other systems which we have imported from China. I must first say that our reliance and dependence on Chinese equipment and hardware and everything has been substantial over the years. You know, there are certain areas, there are certain sectors of industry and business, like pharmaceuticals, like power industry, which cannot do without Chinese equipment. And now we are becoming more and more aware about this. And as a result, in the recent couple of weeks, we have seen that many of the tenders have been scrapped, they have been revoked, and they are now amending the tenders and issuing them once again to ensure that probably we might be a little less reliant on the Chinese. So I would imagine that Australia would take most of this opportunity, which is held out by amended tenders, to come in and probably, you know, bid for whatever systems they can give us.
It's something we've also noticed. In fact, I've just recently reached out to the Defence Minister to invite her either for a podcast or to speak here as well, at least to speak to us, full stop. And I think understand the frameworks that they're putting in place. They are starting to accelerate some of the onboarding for some companies, and particularly the small ones. And we are setting up those defence hubs. Just for the audience, if you have a question, rather than giving you audio, I'd rather you just type the question first, and then over time we'll reach out if we can have you on as a commentator. But if you have a question, please, you can raise your hand, but also ask that question, and then just to have a bit of a sense of control. Goodness knows who we would connect into just yet. I suppose the last area I wanted to cover on was education and the opportunities in education, particularly in cybersecurity. Maybe to Sarosh, your observations in the education market, any particular changes in the education market and the linkages back to cybersecurity?
Well, education as a whole has been, gradually modified over the years, particularly after this present dispensation of the Narendra Modi-led government has come in. We have had many changes in the syllabus and so on. So education system has been evolving certainly over the last 6 years. As far as education specific to cybersecurity is concerned, we really, unfortunately, haven't been paying much attention to this absolutely vital area, you know. And in that sense, we have been open to a lot of vulnerability, and there has been very little way in which we are, addressing this situation. For instance, the police in Bombay wanted to set up some 6 different cells within a couple of months of cybersecurity, because there are extreme numbers of cyber attacks which are going on. In particularly, like I mentioned, Bombay is the financial capital of India. So there are many of these online banking transactions and so on. There are extreme vulnerabilities built into the system, and they are being exploited very, very fully by cyber attackers. And as you know, India is the 6th largest, 6th most vulnerable country to cyber attacks. And 35% of all cyber attacks are coming from China. And even Scott Morrison, your Prime Minister, mentioned the other day that there has been a sustained barrage of cyber attacks from China. But as far as India is concerned, we are unable to do much proactively against this, because first of all, we are still experimenting in framing a policy on this, because right now we are doing it more as a firefighting measure. You know, a system develops, an attack develops, and we try and grapple with that. but we don't really have a policy whereby which we can use on a very effective basis to do this over a period of time.
Go Raman. Sorry, Sarosh. Go Raman.
Yeah, I would like to add to what Sarosh was saying. The couple of opportunities I see for Australian companies and Indian companies to work together is to set up a cyber university in India. There have been a couple of companies from Israel, but that has been very expensive. So Australian companies, a lot of Indian students are studying in Australia. So if there can be a joint cyber university online, I'm not saying physical structure, we can work out the modalities. My team member from the Indian Army and other people, also Rajiv Saxena and Indrajit Singh, can sit with your team and work out the modality of this training program, cyber university, and whether we have to set up a cyber range physically. Yes, that is also possible. We have some campuses available, and that could be a joint partnership between the two countries together. The second area, which is not explored by the Chinese companies, is this the framework of the smart city and safe city solution in India. Indian government has come out with a large investment plan for 100 smart cities all across, and we would like to know from the experience of Australian companies, how can we dovetail the smart city, safe city with the COVID solutions also. We have some Indian companies who are working on this. So there's no point today working on a smart city solution without a built-in safe city and COVID solution itself. So if you have some solutions, there are many opportunities available. These are huge opportunities.
Yeah.
And the budgets are already allocated. Budgets are allocated. We can share with your team. So I would suggest we have put this as part of one of the agenda items. So we could spend one session only on the smart plus safe city plus built-in COVID solution. We could showcase by way of a smart presentation. So there's a company in Bangalore who we are working with, and they have already got the orders also, and they have got very good. And of course, India offers a lot of MSMEs to work on the simulation and training. So 3D simulation, artificial intelligence, machine learning is one session. And of course, 3D printing is a huge market for India, both for the civil, medical, and military applications. Government of India has just cleared a list of components which can be procured by the Indian Air Force itself. Same is the case with the public sector also. So there are opportunities there. So you can collect the database of companies. We can share with them. They can reach out to you. They can reach out to our association also. We have got a large pool of reserve, force with us. We have a network of experts with us, and we can bring them on. So best thing would be one expert from your side, one from Indian side can jointly co-host these sessions for a period of next 1 month. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. And I think Safe Cities is a sort of a passion of mine as well. We consult to a number of cities around Australia, and they always get the execution wrong. It's often they don't have the right strategy, and they're not, as you say, Dovetail is a good example, and they often forget security and the surveillance technology overlaying a sort of digital strategy. They often act in silos of technology.
Sure.
Just trying to get them all together. Look, on that note, we've been going for about 45 minutes, and I think we will close there. There was one last question which I potentially can answer if I just lost it off the screen. Does Australia need a government-to-government defence agreement for procurement? Yes, procurement for defence, military classified hardware that is classified as military will require that government-to-government agreement, and I'll try and get a specific answer in terms of what category that will be. But yeah, if you're selling or taking military equipment offshore to another country, that has to be part of an agreement. Got one last one, and this is what we really wanted in terms of questions from the audience that we can cover. But no, haven't seen it, and we're going to close on that. So just as a close, our next episode, I've had this slide up for a little while, just to double check. Episode 2, we're going to cover off on India's IT channel insights with Rishab Doshi, senior analyst with Canalys. Canalys looks at the channel market, and we've talked about hardware and IT hardware. Basically, that is all sold through the channel, and it's looking at the supply chains of the channel, your system integrators, and how they deal with the larger players. and then get that hardware out onto the end users and actually deployed. So it's a critical factor. We'll probably cover off mainly on mobile and PC channels at this stage, but then we'll get an insight across the wider market. So thank you to Rashab Doshi for that and the Canalys team. We've been working with Canalys year on year for a number of years in the Asia Pacific region also. And I just wanted to raise this. We've got a special event. Israel was mentioned once. I was glad. A National Cybersecurity Insights with the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce, where we have Dr. Feakin, the Australian Ambassador for Cyber Affairs, and Mr. Yigal Una, the Director General of the Israel National Cyber Directorate, joining us next week, next Wednesday. You can join that. If you go to the MySecurity Marketplace, that session is there. And it'll be much like this session in particular, looking at the Israel and Australia cybersecurity landscape and the national cybersecurity strategy. And we'll bring that back. The outcomes from that particular session will obviously be brought back, because I'd like to do something very similar with the Indian strategy also. If you haven't touched on the marketplace, it's as simple as mysecuritymarketplace.com, and all of their events and courses and those types of things are on there, and we have solutions. And it's something, Raman, we will ask the audience, if you're in this space and you want to contribute, or you have a solution, or you want to put yourself out onto the market, the concept is there. So please write to us, write to Saman through the association, or to myself. We'll create that list and start to create those opportunities. That's the idea of this particular session. This session was recorded. It will be available on our MySecurity TV channel on YouTube, and we'll distribute it out to Raman's team and members at the Aerospace and Defence Consultants Association of India. And we're going to be here every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or 11:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, at least through to the end of July. And I appreciate the list that we've created would keep us here through to 2023. We may well still be here, but that's the idea. Raman?
India celebrates independence on 15th of August.
Beautiful.
So we would like to continue till 15th of August.
Okay. Well, that's pretty easy. That's just another 2 weeks. Maybe we can get an Indian Independence Day sponsor or something like that to keep us going.
Yes, we will do that. We'll do that.
And we'll go from there. But look, thank you very much.
Speech on 15th of August.
Beautiful. I'm seeing a raised hand and I can't find the question. So this system will follow up. If there's any questions that are outstanding, we'll follow up directly with you. We hope to see you here next week, next Tuesday. And thank you very much for joining us on episode 1 of our virtual educational series, India's Reach series, Aerospace, Defence and Security Market Trends for Australia and the ASEAN region. Thank you very much for Raman Sopory, my co-host, and our special guest, Sarosh Bana in Mumbai, the Asia Pacific Security Magazine correspondent. Thank you very much, gents.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Signing off. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.